I hate water. Always have. There's something about the weightless feeling, the sensation of losing control that sends my heart racing into overdrive. So what brilliant idea did my therapist suggest for my anxiety? Molly, you need to face your fears. Adult swimming lessons. At 37 years old? Kill me now. The Shreveport Community Center pool smelled like my personal nightmare. Chlorine and impending doom. I clutched my new navy blue swimsuit against my chest, scanning the room for anyone who might witness my humiliation. That's when I spotted her. A redhead with her arms wrapped around herself, looking as terrified as I felt. First time? I asked, attempting casual conversation, while my insides twisted into knots. She turned, revealing the most striking green eyes I'd ever seen. That obvious? Her smile was nervous but genuine. I'm Jacqueline. Jacqueline Harris. Molly Evans, I replied, extending my hand. Fellow drowning victim, apparently. Her laugh was surprisingly melodic for someone about to face their aquatic nightmare. Physical therapist by day, complete disaster in water by, well, all times. Yoga instructor, I offered. Supposedly all about balance and inner peace, yet here I am, about to have a panic attack over 2 feet of water. Our instructor, a no-nonsense woman named Brenda with biceps the size of my thighs, clapped her hands. All right, landlubbers, into the shallow end. Jacqueline glanced at me with mock horror. Shall we face the firing squad together? The next 45 minutes were equal parts humiliation and hysteria. Brenda paired us together, presumably identifying us as the most hopeless cases in the class. Jacqueline and I flailed around like wounded seals, while our classmates, mostly senior citizens, glided through the water with infuriating ease. Float on your back, Brenda commanded. Simple instruction, impossible execution. I tried relaxing into the water, but my body refused to cooperate. Every time I leaned back, panic seized my muscles, sending me into a thrashing frenzy. Jacqueline wasn't faring much better. Her attempts at floating resulted in her sputtering and coughing as water inevitably found its way up her nose. I've got you, Jacqueline said during our third attempt, her hands suddenly beneath my shoulders, steadying me. Trust me, I deal with bodies all day. Something in her touch calmed me, professional, confident. For 3 seconds, I actually floated before reality crashed back and I sank like a stone, pulling her down with me. We both emerged from the 3-foot section gasping and laughing. Some physical therapist I am, she sputtered, wiping water from her eyes. Can't even keep one blonde yoga instructor afloat. As class ended, we dragged ourselves to the edge of the pool, completely drenched and thoroughly defeated. My blonde hair had transformed into stringy seaweed, while Jacqueline's magnificent red mane now resembled a wet copper mop. Same time next week? She asked, wringing water from her hair. I figure if we're going to make complete fools of ourselves, might as well have company. I nodded, surprised at how much I was looking forward to it despite the aquatic trauma. It's a date. I mean, not a date, just a... I know what you meant, she smiled, something warm dancing in those green eyes, though drowning together is quite the bonding experience. As we parted ways in the parking lot, I caught myself watching her walk to her car, confident strides despite our shared humiliation. There was something captivating about Jacqueline Harris that made even the prospect of another swimming lesson seem almost appealing. I drove home with the heat blasting, trying to dry my hair while replaying our interactions. For the first time since my ex had left me for her CrossFit instructor 6 months ago, I felt a spark of something. Interest, curiosity, whatever it was, it made the thought of next Tuesday's swimming lesson feel less like impending doom and more like possibility. You're carrying all your tension right here, Jacqueline said, her fingers pressing into a knot beneath my shoulder blade that I didn't even know existed. I winced involuntarily. Sorry, but that confirms my suspicion. We'd barely made it through our second swimming lesson when she noticed me rolling my shoulder in discomfort. After watching me struggle through basic arm movements in the water, she'd insisted I visit her clinic. Professional curiosity, she'd claimed, though the warmth in her eyes suggested otherwise. Her physical therapy practice occupied a cozy storefront in downtown Shreveport, all soothing blues and natural light. Nothing like the sterile medical offices I'd expected. Just like Jacqueline herself, surprisingly warm, unexpectedly inviting. Most yoga instructors I've met have terrible shoulder problems, she continued, her hands working magic on muscles I'd neglected for years. All that demonstration while your body's not in proper alignment. Are you criticizing my technique? I asked, trying to sound offended but failing miserably as her thumb found another pressure point that made me sigh with relief. Not at all. Just noting that even healers need healing sometimes. Her hands moved with practiced precision, but there was something else there too, a lingering touch that felt less clinical and more personal. When her fingers traced the curve where my neck met my shoulder, I felt a shiver that had nothing to do with muscle tension. "Cold?" she asked, misreading my reaction. "No, just... It's been a while since anyone's touched me like this." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Jacqueline's hands paused momentarily before continuing with renewed focus. "Like what? Therapeutically?" "Like they were paying attention," I admitted. Our eyes met in the wall mirror, and something passed between us. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. She guided me through a series of stretches, her hands supporting my arms as she demonstrated proper form. When her palm pressed against mine to adjust my wrist position, neither of us pulled away as quickly as we should have. "Better?" she asked, her voice slightly huskier than before. "Much," I replied, though the ache had shifted from my shoulder to somewhere deeper. As I was getting ready to leave, fumbling with my wallet, Jacqueline waved away my attempt to pay. "First consultations free for fellow swimming disaster cases," she insisted with a smile. "Then at least let me return the favor," I heard myself saying. "Come to my studio sometime. I teach a restorative class Wednesday evenings that would be perfect for someone who spends all day bending over patients." "You've noticed my posture?" She raised an eyebrow. "Professional curiosity," I echoed her earlier words, earning a laugh that made something flutter in my chest. The next evening, I found myself obsessively straightening yoga blocks and adjusting the thermostat before class. When Jacqueline walked in, her red hair twisted into a casual bun, wearing standard black leggings but somehow looking anything but standard, several of my regular students noticed my distraction. I guided the class through gentle poses, hyper-aware of Jacqueline's presence in the back row. When I demonstrated a heart-opening stretch, our eyes met across the room, and I nearly lost my train of thought mid-instruction. After class, she lingered, helping me roll mats while other students filtered out. "Your teaching voice is different from your swimming panic voice," she observed, handing me the last mat. "More confident. Land is my element. Water is..." I shuddered dramatically. "Our mutual nemesis," she finished, laughing. Her hand brushed mine as she passed over a stray block, and neither of us immediately pulled away. For a moment, we stood connected by that small point of contact, something unspoken hovering between us. "Thank you for today," I finally said, breaking the spell. "For the therapy, I mean." "Thank you for this," she replied, gesturing around the studio. I hadn't realized how much I needed to slow down. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. "See you at our next drowning session?" "Wouldn't miss it," I answered, realizing with surprise that I actually meant it. For the first time, I was looking forward to getting in that damn pool, not for the water but for the woman I'd be sharing it with. That night, I caught myself checking Jacqueline's clinic website, studying her professional headshot and reading her bio 3 times. Something was happening, something unexpected and exhilarating and terrifying all at once, like the feeling of floating on water, surrendering control and trusting you won't sink. Fame found me by accident on a Tuesday. Zara Chen, a local influencer with over 200,000 followers, stumbled into my morning class, nursing a hangover and desperate for detoxification. By afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications as she posted a glowing review about my life-altering chakra alignment and spiritual awakening techniques. I teach basic yoga, not miracles, but apparently Zara's followers didn't know the difference. By Friday, my usually half-empty studio was packed. I added 3 new classes to the schedule and hired an assistant to handle the sudden influx of inquiries. The following week, a local magazine wanted to feature me in their Shreveport's Hidden Gems section. "Look at you, becoming Shreveport's yoga celebrity," Jacqueline teased during our 4th swimming lesson. We'd graduated to actually moving in the water without panicking, progress however small. "It's ridiculous," I admitted, clinging to the pool edge. "These people think I'm some kind of guru. I'm just a woman who found stretching helped her anxiety." "Don't sell yourself short," she said, her green eyes sincere. "Your class helped my back pain more than anything I've tried, and I'm literally a physical therapist." The compliment warmed me more than it should have. Over the past few weeks, our post-swim coffee chats had become the highlight of my increasingly hectic schedule. We'd gradually shifted from discussing our mutual hydrophobia to sharing pieces of our lives, her divorce 3 years ago, my ex's dramatic exit, our shared love of terrible sci-fi movies. Then came the post that changed everything. Marcus Delgado, owner of Enlighten Hot Yoga across town, had apparently been watching my sudden success with growing resentment. The photos appeared first on a local Facebook group, images of me with various clients, doctored to look intimate, suggestive. The captions insinuated that my hands-on adjustments crossed professional boundaries. By nightfall, they'd spread to Instagram, Twitter, and worst of all, the local business networks. I discovered it all while checking my phone after a particularly good class. One moment I was riding the high of perfect execution, the next, staring at manipulated images of myself in compromising positions with nameless students. "This can't be happening," I whispered to my empty studio. The next morning, a couple canceled their couple's yoga package. By afternoon, I'd received 15 cancellation emails, 3 threatening calls, and a message from my landlord expressing concerns. The magazine feature was pulled. Zara Chen posted a video dramatically questioning her judgment and sending prayers to those affected. I didn't tell Jacqueline. I considered canceling our swim lesson, but the thought of sitting alone with this nightmare seemed worse than facing her. So I went, plastic smile firmly in place, determined to pretend everything was fine. We were practicing elementary backstroke when 3 women in the water aerobics class recognized me. "That's her," one whispered loudly enough for half the pool to hear. "The yoga instructor from the scandal." "Disgusting," another replied. "I heard she—" "Hey!" Jacqueline's sharp voice cut across the whispers. "Mind your own business." But the damage was done. The familiar tightness gripped my chest, the precursor to panic I knew too well. Water, normally my nemesis, became suddenly appealing as tears threatened to break free. Maybe I could just sink and disappear. "Molly?" Jacqueline's voice seemed distant despite her proximity. "Molly, breathe with me." But breathing was impossible. The chlorinated air stuck in my lungs as the room began to spin. I vaguely registered Jacqueline's arm around my waist, guiding me out of the pool, away from prying eyes. In the locker room, I finally broke, sobs racking my body as I tried to explain between gasps. "They're saying, the pictures, they made it look like I couldn't finish." "I know," she said quietly, pulling me against her. "I saw them yesterday. I was going to tell you, but I wanted to gather information first. I've been in touch with a friend who specializes in online defamation." I pulled back, searching her face. "You knew? And you still came today? You still wanted to see me?" The surprise in my voice made her expression soften. "Of course I did. I know you, Molly. Those pictures are obviously fake." In that moment, dripping wet on a locker room bench, I realized just how much her belief in me mattered. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "My business, my reputation." "First, you're coming home with me," she said firmly. "My place has security, and you shouldn't be alone. Then we fight back." As she drove us away from the community center, my phone pinged with another notification. Someone had found my address and posted it online with a call to let the predator know what we think of her. Jacqueline's hand found mine across the console. "It's going to be okay," she promised. I wanted desperately to believe her. Jacqueline's cottage wasn't what I expected. Tucked away on the shores of Cross Lake, the modest A-frame seemed to rise organically from the surrounding pines. Inside, floor-to-ceiling windows framed the water view that would normally terrify me, but somehow felt protective with her beside me. "It's not much," she said, dropping my hastily packed bag by the door. "But no one will bother you here." "It's beautiful," I replied honestly, taking in the eclectic mix of mid-century furniture and medical textbooks. The space was quintessentially Jacqueline, practical, unexpected, and strangely comforting. She showed me to the guest room, a snug space with its own view of the lake. "Bathrooms through there, towels in the cabinet, make yourself at home." That first evening passed in a blur of phone calls, me to my assistant, who would temporarily close the studio, Jacqueline to a lawyer friend who specialized in defamation. We ordered Thai food and spread documents across her coffee table, building a timeline of the attacks. Despite the circumstances, working alongside her felt oddly right, as if we'd been doing this for years rather than days. "You should get some sleep," she eventually said, noticing my drooping eyelids. "Tomorrow we start fighting back." That night, I slept more soundly than I had in days, lulled by the unfamiliar security of having someone nearby who believed in me. I awoke to the smell of coffee and the sound of rain hammering against the roof. Jacqueline stood at the stove, hair tousled from sleep, flipping pancakes. Perfect timing, she smiled. Breakfast is almost ready. We ate by the window, watching lightning dance across the lake. After the meal, Jacqueline checked her phone and frowned. Power outage across half the parish, she reported. This storm's worse than they predicted. As if on cue, the lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Spectacular timing, I sighed, the darkness feeling oddly appropriate given the week I'd had. Jacqueline proved surprisingly prepared, producing candles, a battery-powered lantern, and a bottle of wine with impressive efficiency. I keep emergency supplies, she explained. Living by the lake teaches you to expect the unexpected. As the day darkened to evening with no sign of electricity returning, we settled on the floor near her fireplace, the dancing flames casting long shadows across the wooden walls. The wine loosened something in both of us, allowing conversation to flow into territories we hadn't yet explored. Why physical therapy? I asked, watching how the firelight caught the copper in her hair. Car accident when I was 19, she replied. Shattered my femur. My therapist not only helped me walk again, but showed me what it means to heal someone. To really see their pain and work through it together. She glanced at me. What about yoga? What led you there? I traced the rim of my glass. Anxiety. Panic attacks. After college, I was working this soul-crushing corporate job, having daily meltdowns in bathroom stalls. My doctor suggested yoga instead of increasing my medication. I smiled at the memory. First class, I was hooked. Not because I was good at it, I was terrible, but because for 30 minutes my brain shut up. 6 months later, I quit the job and started teacher training. Brave, she murmured. Desperate, I corrected. Sometimes rock bottom is actually a foundation. The conversation meandered through the night as the storm raged outside. We discussed past relationships, her ex-husband who couldn't understand why she wouldn't give up her career to follow his, my ex-girlfriend who thought my yoga practice was cute until it became my priority. We shared childhood dreams, adult fears, and all the mundane favorites that somehow didn't feel mundane when shared in flickering candlelight. Near midnight, with the wine gone and the fire burning low, Jacqueline suddenly said, I haven't told anyone else about the miscarriage. The admission hung between us, weighty and unexpected. Before the divorce, she continued, her voice soft, 4 months along. That's when I knew it was over between us, not because of losing the baby, but because when it happened I felt relief. What kind of person feels relief at something like that? Without thinking, I moved closer, taking her hand. The kind who knew she wasn't where she needed to be. Something shifted in the air between us as our fingers intertwined. The storm, the scandals, the world outside. Everything receded until there was only this moment, this connection. Molly, she whispered, my name sounding like a question. I don't know which of us moved first. Perhaps we both did, drawn by the same invisible current. But suddenly her lips were on mine, hesitant at first, then with growing certainty. Her hand found my cheek, cradling it as if I might break, while mine tangled in her hair, anchoring us both to the moment. When we finally parted, breathless and dazed, the power flickered back on, bathing the room in sudden harsh light. We blinked at each other, the spell momentarily broken by reality's intrusion. Bad timing? She asked, a vulnerability in her eyes I hadn't seen before. I reached over and switched off the lamp, returning us to the gentle glow of embers. Perfect timing, I corrected, leaning in once more. Morning found us tangled together on the couch, my head on her chest, her arm protectively around my shoulders. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean. But as my phone buzzed with new notifications, reality came rushing back. The digital storm was far from over. Your online stalker has gotten sloppy, announced Heather Phillips, not bothering with a greeting as she swept into Jacqueline's living room, laptop bag slung over her shoulder. Her blonde pixie cut and oversized glasses gave her the look of a tech-savvy fairy godmother, which, in my current situation, wasn't far off. Jacqueline had mentioned her friend was good with computers, an understatement that became apparent as Heather unpacked 3 devices and began typing faster than I could follow. Heather's a cybersecurity consultant, Jacqueline explained, setting coffee in front of her friend. She can find digital breadcrumbs most people don't know they're leaving. And your harasser has left a whole damn trail mix, Heather muttered, eyes never leaving the screen. Amateur hour. I'd spent the morning alternating between checking my increasingly toxic social media accounts and stealing glances at Jacqueline, neither of us directly addressing what had happened the night before. The uncertainty of our new dynamic might have been awkward if not for the larger crisis at hand. So you think you can trace who's doing this? I asked, hope creeping into my voice for the first time in days. Oh, I already know who, Heather replied casually. Marcus Delgado, owner of Enlightened Hot Yoga on Uri Drive. He's been accessing these troll accounts from his business IP address like an idiot. Jacqueline and I exchanged stunned glances. Marcus? I repeated. I barely know him. We met once at a wellness practitioner meetup last year. Well, he knows you. Heather turned her laptop toward us, displaying a graph of declining enrollment at Enlighten alongside the rising numbers at my studio. Your success timeline perfectly mirrors his downfall. When that influencer put you on the map last month, his new registration dropped 60%. He's drowning, financially speaking. The pieces clicked into place, the timing, the targeted nature of the attacks. So this is just business? Business, ego, desperation, Heather shrugged. The holy trinity of bad decisions. For hours, we pored over evidence Heather had gathered, screenshots, IP logs, even Marcus's personal social media posts showing increasing bitterness toward trendy wellness phonies stealing clients. We have enough to go to the police, Jacqueline suggested, her hand finding mine beneath the table. I squeezed her fingers, drawing strength from the contact. Will they even care? It's just online stuff. Defamation, harassment, potential business interference, Heather counted off. Plus, Louisiana has some surprisingly robust cyber harassment laws. But before cops, I suggest a lawyer. As evening approached, Heather packed up her equipment. I'll email you everything I've found, and I've set up monitoring on your accounts to track any new activity. After she left, silence settled between Jacqueline and me. The first moment we'd been truly alone since waking up intertwined. So, she said finally. So, I echoed, suddenly fascinated by my coffee mug. About last night. She began just as I said, I don't regret it. We both stopped, then laughed, tension breaking. Neither do I, she said softly. Not one bit. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a notification. Expecting another attack, I was surprised to find an email from a different yoga studio offering space for my classes until this unfortunate situation resolves. The unexpected kindness brought tears to my eyes. People are still good, I whispered. Jacqueline moved closer, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Most are. We just notice the bad ones more. The moment might have led somewhere if not for the simultaneous ping of both our phones, an alert from Heather's monitoring system. New posts were appearing, but these were different, more personal. He knows, I whispered, scanning the message. He knows I'm staying with you. The post included Jacqueline's address, with suggestions that she was harboring a predator and encouraging people to make their feelings known. Even as we watched, comments accumulated, some expressing disgust, others threatening action. He's escalating, Jacqueline said, her professional calm belied by the whiteness of her knuckles as she gripped her phone. The sudden roar of an engine outside sent us both to the window. A car slowed as it passed the cottage, the driver clearly checking the address against something on their phone. This isn't just online anymore, I said, watching the car disappear around the bend, only to be replaced by another cruising slowly. He's brought it to your doorstep. Because of me. No, Jacqueline's voice was steel. Because of him, there's a difference. She pulled me away from the window, drawing the curtains closed. In the dimming light of the living room, she cupped my face in her hands. Listen to me, Molly Evans. You are not responsible for other people's cruelty. The certainty in her eyes anchored me as the world seemed to spin out of control. What do we do now? Now, she said, reaching for her phone. We stop reacting and start acting. It's time Marcus Delgado learns he picked the wrong women to mess with. As she dialed her lawyer, I realized something had fundamentally changed, not just between us, but within me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't drowning in fear. With Jacqueline beside me, I was ready to swim against the current. The threats arrived with the morning mail, physical, tangible evidence that our digital nightmare had materialized into real-world danger. Plain white envelopes, one addressed to me at Jacqueline's address, another at my studio. Inside each, a single sheet with words clipped from magazines, leave town or be exposed. How original, I said, aiming for sarcasm but landing somewhere closer to terror as my hands trembled. 2 weeks had passed since we discovered Marcus's involvement, and our legal wheels were turning painfully slowly. This changes things, Jacqueline said, already on the phone with our lawyer. Physical threats cross a different line. While she spoke in urgent tones in the kitchen, I stared out at the lake, its surface disturbed by a growing wind. The cottage had become both sanctuary and prison. I hadn't returned to my apartment or reopened my studio, conducting what business remained through video classes. The few loyal students who stuck with me were precious lifelines to normality, but the bills were piling up alongside my anxiety. Restraining orders being expedited, Jacqueline announced, joining me by the window. But it'll still take days. I turned to her, the decision I'd been wrestling with all night suddenly clear. I need to leave Shreveport. Her expression froze. What? Just temporarily, I hastened to add. My sister in Austin has been begging me to visit. I could lay low there until this blows over. It would take the pressure off you too. The pressure off me? Jacqueline's voice rose. Is that what you think this is about? Your address is public now. Your practice could suffer. People are driving by your home. So your solution is to run? To let him win? The hurt in her eyes cut deeper than any online comment ever could. Do you think I invited you here because you're a burden? Because you're some obligation I'm fulfilling? Of course not, but... Then what, Molly? Why are you really leaving? The question hung between us, demanding a truth I wasn't ready to face. Because everyone I get close to eventually gets hurt. The words erupted from somewhere deep. My ex, my business partner from my first studio, now you. I'm poison. That's ridiculous. Jacqueline stepped closer. What happened with your ex wasn't your fault. She made her choice. And now I'm making mine. I care about you too much to watch this destroy your life too. Her eyes widened at the admission. You care about me? Of course I do. The emotion broke through, weeks of fear and confusion crystallizing into certainty. More than I've cared about anyone in years. That night after the storm wasn't just comfort or convenience for me. It was real. You are real. And that terrifies me more than anything Marcus could do. Jacqueline closed the distance between us, her hands finding mine. Then stay and be terrified with me. We'll face it together. I don't want to face it. My voice cracked. I want to hide under the covers until it all goes away. I want my boring life back where the scariest thing was swimming lessons. No, you don't. Her certainty was jarring. The woman I've gotten to know these past weeks isn't a hider. She's a fighter who's forgotten how strong she is. The first tear escaped before I could stop it. I don't feel strong. Then borrow mine. She pulled me closer, her forehead resting against mine. Just don't leave. Not like this. Not out of fear. When her lips found mine, it wasn't the careful exploration of our first night together. This was desperation and need, a plea and a promise wrapped in a single point of contact. My hands found her waist, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened, neither of us willing to be the first to break away. I can't lose you, she whispered against my mouth. Not when I've just found you. Something broke open inside me, a dam holding back feelings I'd been too scared to name. As we moved together toward her bedroom, each touch was an affirmation, each kiss a vow. Clothing fell away, barriers both physical and emotional dissolving under trembling hands, and whispered confessions. After, as we lay tangled in sheets in each other, the setting sun painted the room in amber hues. Jacqueline traced patterns on my bare shoulder, her touch sending pleasant shivers down my spine. I never expected you, she said softly. In all my plans, all my careful organizing, there was never a space labeled fall for the yoga instructor who's afraid of water. I smiled against her skin. And yet here we are. Here we are, she agreed. So what now? Are you still leaving? I looked up, meeting her gaze. No, I'm staying. We face him together. She kissed my forehead, relief evident in the release of tension I hadn't noticed she was carrying. Together. Outside, headlights swept across the wall as another curious car drove slowly past. But within our cocoon of sheets and newfound certainty, the outside world seemed less threatening than it had hours before. Whatever Marcus Delgado had planned next, he would be facing not one wounded woman, but two standing strong. "Are you sure about this?" Jacqueline squeezed my hand as we stood in the community center's empty gymnasium. The space, normally used for basketball leagues and Zumba classes, had been transformed with yoga mats arranged in concentric circles, physical therapy demonstration stations along the perimeter, and a small stage at the front. "Not remotely," I admitted, surveying our handiwork. "But doing nothing isn't working either." The Community Wellness Day had been Jacqueline's idea, a free event combining yoga, physical therapy education, and open dialogue about online harassment. We'd spent 2 weeks planning while Marcus's attacks continued, each more personal than the last. But something unexpected had happened alongside the harassment. Support had begun to materialize. First came the local coffee shop owner, who offered to cater the event for free. Then the community center director, who waived the rental fee. Soon, a coalition of small business owners had formed around us, many sharing their own stories of online bullying and business sabotage. What began as a defensive action was transforming into a movement. "First attendees in 10 minutes, Heather announced, bustling past with clipboards. She'd taken on the role of event coordinator with militant efficiency. Local news crew just pulled up. Remember, stick to the talking points. Community over controversy, education over accusation. News crew? My stomach lurched. You didn't mention media coverage. Jacqueline winced apologetically. Heather thought it might help change the narrative. If you're uncomfortable. No, I interrupted, taking a deep breath. She's right. We need to control the story now. I'm ready. The doors opened, and people began filtering in. Curious community members, loyal clients, fellow small business owners. Each friendly face helped ease my anxiety, reminding me why this mattered beyond just clearing my name. The event began with a gentle yoga flow I led for all experience levels, followed by Jacqueline's workshop on everyday movements to prevent injury. Throughout, I kept scanning the growing crowd, wondering if Marcus would make an appearance. "He's here," Jacqueline whispered during a transition, nodding subtly toward the back of the room where Marcus Delgado stood, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Good," I replied, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "Let him see what he's up against." The final segment of our event was the discussion panel. Myself, Jacqueline, a local psychologist specializing in online harassment, and the owner of a restaurant who had faced similar trolling campaigns. As we shared our experiences, I watched the audience lean in, many nodding in recognition. "The isolation is what makes online attacks so devastating," the psychologist explained. "Victims feel alone, ashamed, when in reality, many others have faced similar situations." When it was my turn to speak, I found myself looking directly at Marcus as I addressed the room. 2 months ago, I was a yoga instructor whose biggest concern was surviving swimming lessons. Then overnight, I became a villain in a story I never wrote. The hardest part wasn't the lies themselves. It was watching people believe them without question. From the corner of my eye, I saw the news cameras pivoting to follow my gaze, several audience members turning to spot Marcus shifting uncomfortably. "But today isn't about pointing fingers," I continued, returning my attention to the wider audience. "It's about recognizing how quickly we can destroy someone's livelihood with a click, and how we might build each other up instead." During the Q&A session, a middle-aged woman stood. "I saw those posts about you. I even canceled my membership at your studio." She paused, guilt crossing her features. I never once considered they might not be true. "I'm sorry for that." Her acknowledgement opened a floodgate, with others sharing similar confessions. The tide of the conversation had turned, and I wasn't the only one who noticed. Marcus began edging toward the exit, only to find himself intercepted by Heather. "Leaving so soon?" she asked loudly enough for nearby attendees to hear. "I thought you might want to explain why those defamatory posts traced back to your business IP address." A hush fell over the section of the room, attention magnetized to the confrontation. Marcus's face reddened as he hissed something to Heather, who smiled pleasantly in return. "Sorry, could you speak up?" she asked sweetly. "I'm sure everyone would be interested in your expertise on digital marketing tactics." He glanced around, noticing the growing audience, including a reporter who had pivoted their camera in his direction. "This is harassment," he sputtered. "You can't ambush me like this." "Interesting choice of words," Jacqueline commented, having made her way to Heather's side. "Considering what you've been doing to Molly for weeks." As Marcus stormed out, the damage was done. The whispers began immediately, attendees connecting dots we hadn't needed to explicitly draw for them. By evening, when we finally packed up the last mat, exhaustion hit me like a physical force. But alongside it was something unfamiliar. Hope. "We did it," Jacqueline said, wrapping her arms around me from behind as I stared at the empty room. The narrative is shifting. And Marcus is about to learn that actions have consequences. She turned me to face her. The community is with us now. That makes all the difference. As we walked to her car, my phone pinged with notifications. Not the dreaded attacks I'd grown accustomed to, but messages of support, apologies, and interview requests. The tide had indeed turned. "Read the comments section," Jacqueline urged, thrusting her phone at me as I toweled off after our swim lesson. 8 weeks had passed since our community event, and the digital landscape had transformed completely. Where once lurked vicious attacks now bloomed testimonials and support. The local news story had gone semi-viral, picked up by regional stations, and even a national blog covering small business issues. "I've been attending Molly's classes for years," I read aloud from a comment. "Her teaching saved my back after surgery when traditional methods failed. These allegations were always absurd to anyone who actually knew her." Another read, "As a former enlightened client who switched to mindful motion, I can testify that Ms. Evans maintains the highest professional standards. Shame on those who spread lies without verification." "It's working," I whispered, scrolling through dozens more supportive messages. People are actually thinking critically. "The truth has a way of surfacing," Brenda, our swimming instructor, commented as she passed. "Like good swimmers eventually do." We'd continued our lessons throughout the ordeal, finding unexpected solace in the water that once terrified us both. Today marked a milestone, our first successful lap across the deep end without panic or assistance. "Speaking of surfacing," Jacqueline said as we walked to the locker room, "Marcus hasn't been seen at his studio in over a week. Word is he's facing a lawsuit from his investors for mismanagement." "I almost feel sorry for him," I admitted, surprised to find I meant it. Almost. Our lawyer had filed defamation charges, but the court of public opinion had rendered its verdict long before any legal proceedings could begin. Marcus's business had collapsed under the weight of negative publicity, while my studio had reopened with a waiting list for new classes. In the locker room, as I changed into dry clothes, Jacqueline grew uncharacteristically quiet. "Everything okay?" I asked, recognizing the thoughtful crease between her brows. "I was just thinking," she began, then paused, fiddling with her locker key. "We've spent so much time fighting fires lately. Maybe we should celebrate our victory. What did you have in mind?" "Well," she grinned suddenly, "we're officially graduate-level swimmers now, and my friend owns that boat rental place on the lake." I stared at her in mock horror. "Absolutely not. Baby steps, Harris. Baby steps." Her laughter echoed against the tile walls. "Fine, dinner then, somewhere nice." "Dinner sounds perfect." That evening, dressed in the one formal outfit I'd packed during my hasty relocation to Jacqueline's cottage, I waited in her living room. When she emerged from the bedroom, the sight stole my breath. Her red hair cascaded in soft waves around her shoulders, and a green dress highlighted her eyes in ways that made my heart stutter. "You look..." Words failed me. "So do you," she replied, understanding the unfinished compliment perfectly. The restaurant overlooked the river, its patio strung with twinkling lights that reflected on the water below. Over wine and excellent food, conversation flowed easily between us. No discussion of Marcus, lawsuits, or scandals. Just two women discovering each other beyond the crisis that had brought them together. "I've been thinking," Jacqueline said as dessert arrived. "About the future." "That sounds ominous," I teased, though my pulse quickened. "Not at all." She reached across the table, taking my hand. "More like promising. My lease expires next month at the clinic, and your studio space is bigger than you need. Are you proposing a business merger?" "Among other things." Her thumb traced circles on my palm, sending shivers up my arm. "I've watched you rebuild from nothing these past weeks. Your resilience, your grace under pressure, they're extraordinary, Molly." Heat rose to my cheeks. I had help. Exceptional help. "We make a good team." She squeezed my hand. In and out of the water. The moment hung between us, charged with possibility. Then, with a determination that took me by surprise, Jacqueline slid from her chair and, still holding my hand, dropped to one knee beside our table. Several nearby diners gasped, conversations halting mid-sentence as they turned to watch. "Jacqueline, what are you—" "Molly Evans, I know this is fast. I know we've only known each other a few months, but when you find something rare, you don't let timing dictate your choices." From her pocket she produced a small box, opening it to reveal a simple silver band. "I don't want to waste another day wondering if you feel what I feel. Will you marry me?" Time suspended as the restaurant around us held its collective breath. In the weeks we'd spent together, I'd imagined many futures. Returning to my apartment, staying at the cottage temporarily, perhaps eventually moving in together. But this leap beyond all those careful steps resonated with a rightness I couldn't deny. "Yes," I answered, the word emerging as naturally as breathing. "Yes." The restaurant erupted in applause as Jacqueline slipped the ring onto my finger, then rose to kiss me, her lips tasting of champagne and promise. In that moment, with her arms around me and strangers cheering our happiness, the past months of turmoil seemed almost worth it for leading us here. Later that night, as we walked along the riverfront hand in hand, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Local yoga studio owner faces legal consequences for defamation campaign. Marcus's downfall was complete, but it no longer occupied center stage in my thoughts. "It's really over," I said, looking not at the headline, but at the ring catching moonlight on my finger. "No," Jacqueline corrected gently. "It's just beginning. 6 months can change everything." The grand opening banner fluttered across the entrance of what was once my humble yoga studio, now transformed into Aqua Zen Integrated Wellness Center. Inside, the space had evolved, half dedicated to my expanded yoga classes, the other half housing Jacqueline's physical therapy practice, with a custom-built therapeutic pool connecting both worlds. "The contractor says we're all set," Jacqueline announced, checking items off her clipboard with characteristic precision. "Water temperature is perfect, sound system installed, liability insurance confirmed." I wrapped my arms around her from behind, resting my chin on her shoulder. "Control freak." "Visionary," she corrected, leaning back into my embrace. "There's a difference." Our journey to this moment hadn't been straight or simple. The aftermath of Marcus's public downfall brought unexpected challenges. Media attention that threatened to define us by scandal rather than skill. Initial wariness from potential clients, the delicate dance of combining two established businesses into one cohesive vision. But the hardest part had been convincing ourselves we deserved this happiness, this success, after so much turmoil. Some nights I still woke, gasping from nightmares where the accusations returned, the online mobs descended anew. On those nights, Jacqueline would hold me until my breathing steadied, whispering reassurances that anchored me to reality. "Penny for your thoughts?" Jacqueline asked, turning to face me. "Just marveling at how far we've come," I replied, gesturing around the sunlit studio. "From drowning in 3 feet of water to owning a therapeutic pool. Life's strange." Speaking of which, she glanced at her watch. "Brenda will be here in 20 minutes for the final run-through." I groaned. "Remind me why we hired our swimming torturer as our aquatic program director?" "Because she's the best," Jacqueline kissed my nose, "and because she cried when we asked her." Tough as nails Brenda, reduced to tears by our job offer, had been a sight to behold. After retiring from the community center, she'd embraced our vision with unexpected enthusiasm, helping design programs specifically for trauma survivors, anxiety sufferers, and others who found traditional exercise environments overwhelming. The grand opening ceremony was small but meaningful. No press, just friends, loyal clients, and the network of supporters who'd stood by us through the worst. Heather, now our official IT manager, supervised the live stream for those who couldn't attend in person. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jacqueline addressed the gathered crowd, her voice steady despite her nervousness about public speaking. "Welcome to Aqua Zen." This center was born from a simple idea, that healing happens when we face our fears together. She reached for my hand, drawing me beside her. "My wife and I met as 2 adults terrified of water. Today, we invite you to join us in discovering that what scares us most often holds the key to our greatest transformations." Wife still sent a pleasant shiver through me, though we'd been married 3 months now. The lakeside ceremony had been small and perfect, just us, a few friends, and the water that had first brought us together, no longer an adversary but a witness to our commitment. After the speeches and champagne toast, when the last guests had departed, Brenda approached us with a mischievous smile. I have one final graduation test for my star pupils, she announced, producing a set of keys. These are yours now. But you haven't truly claimed this place until you've experienced it fully. She headed for the exit, calling over her shoulder, "Lock up when you're done. And remember what I taught you about breathing." As the door closed behind her, Jacqueline and I exchanged puzzled glances. "Did our former swim instructor just suggest I began. "I believe she did." Jacqueline's eyes danced with amusement as she moved to the control panel, dimming the lights until only the underwater illumination of the pool cast blue ripples across the ceiling. "We could get arrested," I pointed out, not very convincingly. "It's our pool," she countered, already slipping off her shoes. "Our business, our rules." I watched, mesmerized, as she continued undressing, her silhouette outlined by the glowing water. "You're serious." "Dead serious." She stood at the pool's edge, gloriously uninhibited. "Unless you're still afraid of the deep end?" The challenge in her voice was unmistakable, irresistible. With a laugh, I followed her lead, clothes forming a trail to the water's edge. "Never again," I promised, taking her hand as we stepped into the water together. Later, floating on our backs in the center of the pool, hands still intertwined, I marveled at how completely my relationship with water had transformed, from terror to therapy to this intimate communion. "What are you thinking about?" Jacqueline asked softly, her voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "How the things that once terrified me have become the things that saved me," I answered, watching the play of light across the ceiling. "Water, vulnerability, you." She turned toward me, her red hair spreading like flame across the surface. "Do you regret any of it? The scandal, the attacks? If you could go back and avoid it all?" I considered the question seriously, remembering the darkest moments of doubt and fear. "No," I finally answered. "It was all necessary current, carrying us here." As winter approached outside, we remained suspended in our private summer, no longer afraid of deep waters or deep feelings. Whatever challenges awaited beyond our sanctuary, we would face them together, having learned the most important lesson. Sometimes you have to let yourself sink before you discover you've always known how to swim.